Summer Mondays with Run Pure Sports. It's JT Hayes. Welcome to the Swing for the Fences show on this beautiful Monday. You may notice something a little different. I'm alone. We are expecting the great Bryce Morrow to join me here in a couple of minutes. Third and Schlong himself will be coming into the studio right now. And DC is on vacation, so he is somewhere probably hiking and running from mountain lions. So go ahead and let us know if you think that DC or the Mountain Lions is going to go ahead and win, and if we'll ever see him again. We've got Bryce. I'm going to add Bryce here. Bryce, how are you? I hope that Mateo had a nice time at the groomer, which I'm just going to assume either there or doggy daycare. I will tell you, I've got Quinn snoozing behind me. We were out of town. I've been out of town for 10 days. I was in Chicago with the boys, DC and Steve and a couple of others last weekend, then went to the beach for a week, came back, picked up Quinn, and her stomach wasn't feeling well. And she went on to destroy the living room and the dining room overnight. And it's been a rough day here, Bryce, but we're excited about this slate. How are you doing? How's Mateo doing?
Mateo's doing wonderful. He's sitting right here.
There we go.
So, yeah, I hate being late for anything. So that was kind of annoying, but whatever. Having a pretty solid day so far. I got no complaints here. I definitely relate with the Quinn issues because Mateo he's had one of like the exact same issues in the past, and thankfully we have hardwood floors like all throughout our loft and whatnot. So like not having to deal with that on the carpets is a much easier solution.
Yeah, it was not fun. And then, I'm eating lunch today and I usually share a little bit with Quinn, which is not a good thing, a good habit to get into with your dogs. But whatever I have, Quinn has a little bit of too. And today I just said, I'm sorry, I'd love to give you some of this, but I'm not cleaning it up in 10 minutes. So we're gonna let her get acclimated and get moving on to this 8-game slate. Bryce, we've got an interesting contest tonight, the $5 with $50K up top. They're bringing that back. I guess people were clamoring for a $3 with $100K up top. Everything else looks about the same. Some people talking about this on DraftKings, of course, the $88 looking a little bit bigger. But 8 games, we've got some weather in at least Cincinnati to consider. But in terms of the overall slate, I know you're a multi-entry guy, just as I am. Anything stick out to you here about this slate? We know that Mondays can be at times a little bit lower scoring because teams are traveling. You have that Sunday night game. The only team that played on Sunday night that's on this slate is the Red Sox. But to me, it looks like a fantastic slate. I think from the pitching standpoint, there's a couple of guys that I clearly want to get to and a lot of guys I want to avoid. And then I really think there's only 4 or 5 offenses that I have a lot of interest in. But it sets up as an interesting slate. What are your thoughts?
So I think today's a little bit unique just in the fact that you're going to have to be a little more different than usual. Like, with the $5, it's also 47,000 people. Normally it's like, if it's $18, it's like 12,000. So,
right.
I probably will take more stances than I normally do, and try and get a little more different than I normally would on like a higher dollar buy-in contest. Talking for the 150 maxers here, I'll likely play a main team as well, just because. I was hoping they'd have they'd run the 5 and then the 15 sometimes, which is nice because, I can run, 300 lineups. But yeah, I think it's kind of how, what contest you're playing is how you should approach this slate as always.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the teams that are going to be popular. So if you're in that 888, that's as high as I went today. So I've got some in there, and then max the $5, which I'm treating more, like you say, as a lottery, is like what different combinations can win. I don't want to have 15% Royals and 15% of, say, the Reds, right? Those two teams are going to be very popular. But we'll get into it. And like I said, 8 games today. We've got myself and Bryce. So go ahead. It's a good day if you have general questions to go ahead and get us a bit of a time to answer them. So go ahead and hit them in the chat. Stevers says Mountain Lion minus, is that 50 or 50,000? Minus 50,000. That's a pretty big line there. I don't know. DC's been working on his sprint speed. So, but Bryce, the first one we'll get to, The New York Mets, man, I was getting messages. Of course, I'm a recovering Mets fan living now in Atlanta, and we've had a great run down here. Thursday, Friday, all these nasty messages from friends who are still Mets fans who still insist on torturing themselves, thinking that this team is ever going to be anything but the cursed piece of manure that it is. And they're all excited Thursday and Friday. Bryce, my phone was dead silent Saturday, Sunday, just nothing as the Braves continued to hit home run after home run. The new shiny bullpen pieces for the Mets. Hey, turns out they suck too. But anyway, enough about that. Twins at the Mets. Simeon Woods Richardson for the Minnesota Twins. He is 6,700 on DraftKings. And Jose Quintana, who started to show a little bit of more what Jose Quintana really is, which is a mediocre pitcher at this point in his career, giving up a lot of hard contact, a lot of home runs. And man, that's something against this Twins team, giving up that power that fits right into their strength. So what are you looking at here, the Twins and the Mets, to start the slate off?
Twins and the Mets, I think this is not my favorite game for either pitchers or hitters, really. It's a game I'm likely going to be underweight on, to be honest. We have some high-end pitching options that I think we do want to get to. I think I would probably prefer Quintana in the Mets side of this game, but it's not with Royce Lewis back in the lineup. Makes me a little more hesitant. The Twins can throw out like a pretty solid right-handed lineup against him, so he's likely not going to be a huge buy. Maybe between 5 and 10% my 150. I would think Simeon Woods Richardson, kind of more of a fade for me. I just don't think he has the upside to compete with these strikeout guys that we have at the top today. So he's likely either a flat fade or sub 5%. I mean, he's going to go completely. We have him projected at 6% ownership. I'll likely be under that. And then Quintana's at 5%. I'm likely going to be over on him. So I think the bats kind of worked their way around it as well. I don't mind Met stacks tonight. I think it'll get you a little different. Like I don't think anyone's going to be playing the Mets at these prices when there are better options on the slate. So I think those are like more of a deep tournament play than anything else. And you can see the Twins, with Royce Lewis back in the lineup, they can still do some damage to Quintana. So I likely want to be slightly over on them as well. Favorites would obviously be Buxton, Royce Lewis, and like a Ryan Jeffers would be like a good 3-man stack if you wanted to get like super different.
Yeah, in terms of pitchers, I think Simeon Woods Richardson is an okay pitcher that I think, according to everything I look at, should be getting a little better results. But this necessarily isn't the matchup that I want to chase those results. You mentioned the other pitchers on this slate. I do think the bats here are interesting, particularly mini stacks, as you said, because as we saw over the weekend, this Mets bullpen is still a bit of a mess. And if they can get some power, like I said, off of Quintana, you get a couple of runs off of him, maybe get him out of the game in the 4th or the 5th inning, then I think it becomes an opportunity for Minnesota to have that outlier slate-breaking game against a very weak New York Mets bullpen. So I think the Mets are fine for minis. I'll definitely have some full stacks of the Twins. And I don't think I'm going to roster either of these pitchers in my 150 set. I just don't think that, to your point, the upside, especially with the Minnesota pitchers, especially with a guy like Woods Richardson, the first time that he struggles, that bullpen is going to be warming up at Citi Field. We'll move on to the next game on the slate. It is Seattle heading into Boston. Pretty mild totals here, 4.2 for the Mariners, 4.5 for the Red Sox, and probably because we've got some good pitchers on the mound. Logan Gilbert going for the Mariners. And then Nick Pivetta, look, he gets lit up his last start in Coors Field. Outside of that and maybe one other start this season, he's been very, very reliable. The Mariners coming through this week, and I played them all weekend, Bryce, and had a decent weekend, but they were facing White Sox pitching. And we'll talk more about White Sox pitching a little bit later on in the slate. Now they get certainly a downgrade in terms of the matchup, at least from a starting pitcher perspective, and it's Nick Pivetta. And I think Nick Pivetta is a pretty good play tonight. The books agree. What do you think here in Seattle at Boston?
I think this is probably the most pivotal game of the slate as a whole, just because, you have two. Skeens is obviously pitcher one. You probably have pitcher two. I would rank Pivetta ahead of Gilbert tonight. He'd be my number 2 overall pitcher. So, you're going to get massive leverage against either of these pitchers if you do play hitters in this game. So this is a game that, I want to be over Pivetta. He's coming in around 40% owned. I'll likely be around there. Gilbert, I am seeing at 18%. Likely going to be around there on him too. I just think that pitching talent outweighs Fenway Park. It's not like it's like incredibly hot or the wind's blowing out, like it's mid 70s. Don't really see it as, it's obviously a much better hitting environment than Seattle, but it's nothing that really scares me here. That being said, like, I'm still including 5-man stacks. I think the best way if you want to attack bats in this game is through 5-man stacks as opposed to smaller stacks, because like you want to get these guys out and you want to get into the bullpens. So, to do that, it's likely going to be a 5-man as opposed to a 3-man. So I do want to be over on especially Boston 5-mans. I think I'd rather pick on Gilbert than Pivetta here, but yeah, I like the Red Sox here in general.
And of course, the point about the Mariners pitching, as we've seen all season long, just absolutely dominant at home at T-Mobile Park, which is a massive edge for them in terms of the park, in terms of the weather, in terms of a lot of different things. Now, you saw even a couple of guys struggle this weekend in Chicago against the White Sox, facing a much stronger offense today. So I'm on this side with you. I will definitely have some Gilbert, but Pivetta may be my favorite pitcher on this slate, points per dollar considered, because I do think that Seattle is going to have somewhat of a letdown after facing essentially double and triple A pitching for the last 3 days in Chicago. We'll move on, and this is a game that's going to be an interesting one, Bryce, just simply because of the weather here. Multiple reports, of course, our own Stephen Coy, as well as others around the industry, calling for an unpredictable night where heavy rain is almost certain to show up at some point. And you've got the Cubs heading into Cincinnati, the Reds back home where we like to play them. We like to play opposing offenses at Great American Ballpark as well. Jameson Taillon, 8,100. Carson Spires returning, 7,500. And a game that I think ordinarily we'd be very interested in because of the way that the slate sets up with some very good pitching and then some mediocre pitchers, but not in terrible spots. But it depends on what you make of the weather. What are your thoughts here? First of all, any interest in Taillon or Spires? And what are you doing in terms of the offenses here?
So to me, and, I always like to look up this stuff like closer to game time. It's a little harder to do 2 hours before. So like getting the Run Pure Sports Discord, we can give you a full update. As of now, I'm playing the game as I normally would and just kind of ignoring the weather. The main risk is that like some storms pop up over the stadium, cause a delay, and then when the heavy stuff comes in, it's going to be a washout. If there's no pop-ups over the stadium, it essentially looks like it'll play 9 innings to me. So when I just like built my blind teams, I got like none of these pitchers. I don't really want either of them. And then, if people are fading due to weather and the game starts on time, I want to be over on the hitters here. I think it's a decent spot for bats. Obviously, Great American Ballpark is one of the better or the best home run park. So I know the Cubs kind of suck, but they still have upside. And yeah, I'm interested to see this Reds lineup today. I think
Ellie De La Cruz is not in.
Yeah,
not in the Reds lineup.
He's going to be out of the lineup today. So I think that really does hurt the Red stacks, just because he just provides so much upside. Granted, you're not going to have to pay like for like a premium player, but I think it still hurts those stacks. So I would prefer the Cubs side if you're playing this game. And as of now, I will be playing the game, likely going to be over on the Cubs and slightly over on the Reds, just because I think people will totally ignore it because of the weather. So, if that position changes, I will let everyone know in Discord if I do decide to pull hitters.
I think for me personally, I think Reds minis, particularly left-handers, make some sense. You want to be careful about the pinch hit risks. The one note I'll point out that I don't know that people don't know or people haven't taken notice of, but this Cubs bullpen has been quite good. It's gotten stronger. They've made some moves. So I don't love this game as a whole. You've got, and it's not a typical Great American game where it's hot. It's I guess it's humid there because of the weather, but the wind is blowing in a little bit. So I think for me, perhaps some Cubs and maybe more on the lines of mini stacks for the Cincinnati Reds. We'll move on. Another game that has a chance for some showers, but generally looks like it's going to be fine and play without issue. The Texas Rangers going into St. Louis. Nathan Eovaldi at 9,300 and Andre Palante at 7,800. Bryce, Texas, tough weekend, especially for the pitchers in Toronto. And they made some moves to shore the team up, getting Carson Kelly, trading away Michael Lorenzen. And mostly, we think, going to rely on the fact that they have 3 stud pitchers, if they all come back healthy, coming back here in the next month. And then the Cardinals kind of not doing a whole lot. What are your thoughts here on this game?
I think Eovaldi is going to be one of my biggest buys of pitcher today. He throws deep enough into games. He's been really good recently. St. Louis lineup does not scare me whatsoever here. It is hot and humid in St. Louis. It's a little bit of a concern, but he gets a lineup that doesn't really worry me. And I think he gets you off some of the chalk up top if you want to get different pitchers. So I'm likely to be significantly over the field on Eovaldi. Seeing it projected around 12%. I'm likely going to be 20 to 25. Don't really like the Cardinals side as much as the Texas side. I much prefer Texas bats to Cardinals bats here. Picking on Eovaldi, I just think there are better spots to go to. And the Rangers have been stealing bases recently too, which just gives them even more upside. I think they make for a really good 5-man stack tonight. That'll be a little more contrarian than you might think. I think Kansas City is going to come in as pretty heavy chalk tonight for an 8-game slate.
Yeah, so the point about Eovaldi, when I first looked at this slate, went through every game, Eovaldi was my favorite pitcher on this slate by a large, large margin. I'm going to explain why. When you think about what these teams are going through right now, so let's talk about the Texas pitching. Michael Lorenzen pitches 1 inning on Saturday. They lose John Gray before he even throws a pitch yesterday. I actually think Lorenzen came in and pitched later on in yesterday's game because they were completely out of arms. Then they trade Lorenzen away after the game. This is the most you go out there and you be an ace for us spot as a team is going to find. And Nathan Eovaldi has been unarguably the ace of the Texas Rangers. And I think Bruce Bochy is going to say, here's the ball. Don't come in. I'll come get you when I think you're tired. And as far as the Rangers bats, I think this is also a spot where the team says, hey, we got our ass kicked the last couple of days. We got our ace on the mound. We got to go out there and we got to get him some runs early. I think Texas is going to end up being one of my most heaviest plays on the slate, both Eovaldi and Texas. Like, you're really not interested in the St. Louis Cardinals or Andre Palante for what I think he's got a 3 strikeout prop with an 8K price tag. So no thank you.
He's a total fade for me on this slate. They're just guys with upside that you want to play. It's kind of like a Simeon Woods Richardson situation.
Yeah, Kid Lightning in check. 4 innings pitched, 55 pitches for Lorenzen yesterday. So thank you for your mop-up work. Then they trade him. But that bullpen is it's basically a situation where Bochy says, here, get me to Kirby. Get me to Kirby Yates. And I think he goes out and he does that tonight. Steve, I'll send you some cash. You can go ahead and bet that money line for me as well, Texas money line. We'll move on here. The next game, another interesting spot. And this may be, I know you said that Boston and Seattle was the most pivotal game on the slate, but I think the most pivotal decision is what you do with Paul Skeens. And this is Paul Skeens and the Pirates going into Houston. Jake Bloss on the other side of this. Skeens now priced up at 10-5. Houston, the Astro team, man, they've been really, really hit and miss. They've had some really great games, but there's also been a lot of games where they just haven't done much. They haven't done a whole lot. The one thing they don't do a lot of, though, is generally they don't strike out a lot. They put the ball in play. And Skeens, for the year, this isn't like a 3-game sample. This is for the year. The type of pitcher that he's been, he's allowed a 100 average on balls that have been hit in play and has stranded 87% of runners. Now, he's an outstanding pitcher, a generation title, whatever you want to say. Bryce, that's not going to continue the whole season. The question is it going to go up tonight? So what are your thoughts here with the Pirates in Houston?
Yeah, I think, all those stranded runners are kind of due to, his strikeout ability when he does put guys on base. It's just kind of harder to get them in. Like his ERA estimators and like XFIP and stuff. I mean, those are like still absolutely elite. I think they're like 2.5 off the top of my head, depending on which one you prefer to use. But Skeens, I'm going to be absolutely jamming tonight. I think he shoves here. Not Houston lineup doesn't particularly scare me. He gets a lot of righties in it. I just think it's a really solid matchup for him. Don't particularly like the Pirates side for bats either. I think people might go to them just because they're cheap, but I think I know JBC put out the under in this game as a pretty top bet. So I'm likely going to be pretty under on the hitters and well over on Skeens. Now this Bloss kid, I think he could be worth a play here if you're looking at a cheap guy, that'll let you do some stuff. He does have some strikeout upside compared to some of these other cheap guys that we've talked to. Now, I don't think he's going to pitch deep into the game or anything like that. But, it's 5.5 juiced under. It's not great on the slate, but if you need some salary relief, he's definitely staying in my pool.
Yeah, a couple notes. You mentioned the under there, or the under on the 5.5. It was at 4.5 earlier, so it actually jumped. They've got him right about 5 innings. And then Steven Kreishin is in here saying Skeens K-prop 6.5 juice on the over. Skeens K-prop earlier today was 7.5 juiced under, but then he was 18.5 plus 110 in terms of out recorded. Those numbers have gone essentially inverted. So now his K-prop came down, but he's now got an 18.5 with juice on the over. So looks like books think that this is going to be a low scoring game, that Skeens is going to pitch deep. And maybe Bloss gives us 5 clean, and at 6,600, I think that's about as one of the best punts on the slate in terms of pitching. Anything else to add? Pittsburgh and Houston, Bryce?
No, just over on pitchers, under on bats. If not, full fade for bats for me.
All right. Once again, any questions, any comments, go ahead, get them in the chat. I know we've got a bunch of people watching here tonight getting ready for this 8-game slate. Move on to the next slate. And it's been a big day for the Chicago White Sox, not in the way that you'd like to have a big day if you're a fan of a major league team. But Kansas City heads into Chicago. Chicago today dealing Michael Kopech, dealing Eric Fetty, and dealing Tommy Pham. So at least one hitter weaker, although Pham had certainly cooled off considerably after a hot start. Alec Marsh here at 7,700 and Chris Flexen at 6K. You mentioned it. The Royals are going to be extremely popular here on this slate, and for good reason. Like I said, we played the Mariners all weekend long because we knew that you were going to get at least half a game out of that White Sox bullpen. We know the White Sox are probably not done dealing yet. They could pull what Toronto did and trade some guys in the middle of the game, making this a stronger matchup for both Alec Marsh as well as for the Kansas City hitters who, Bryce, they were popular all weekend long too against the Cubs and didn't do a whole hell of a lot. Now they go on the road to Chicago. How do you feel about this game in general? How do you feel about Alec Marsh now with an upgraded matchup? And how do you feel about playing popular Royals one more day in a row?
I'm fine playing popular Royals. It's just like, you just got to get different elsewhere. And, you know, say you're playing a Royals 5-man, I would play really off the board, like 3-man. You know, the sims that we have are really good at like getting you different, even if you do end up playing some chalk. I'm fine eating some Royals chalk here. I think they're the top offense of the slate. Um, you know, the Chicago team seems to have just completely given up, and I don't particularly want anything to do with. Um, sorry, lost my train of thought there. I don't want anything to do with flexing tonight. Marsh, he's probably going to be a sell for me tonight. Honestly, I know this White Sox lineup's absolutely trash. I just can't get on board with an AK Alec Marsh being like the third highest owned pitcher on the slate. I think he comes in around 30% just because, I think it's really easy to make like a Pavetta and him build work, or like a Skeens and him build work in terms of like what you can do with bats. So I hate to say it, I'm likely going to be buying on the White Sox here. I think they're a decent contrarian stack, and you get direct leverage off of Alec Marsh. Now they traded away Tommy Pham. I get the argument against them, but they still have some guys who have pop in this lineup. I don't think I don't like Vaughn, Robert, Sheets, Eloy kind of be my preferred route to go, like guys that have power. I do prefer them as 3-mans to 5-mans just because like I don't really want the guys at the bottom of the order here. I don't think you need to go that off the board. But it does get you direct leverage off of what I think is, a too chalky Alec Marsh. I'm likely going to come in around, I would assume, 10 to 15% on Alec Marsh here. I think that'll be about half the field, and likely going to be around the field on the Royals bats if they do come in this high owned. And I think they're going to come in like crazy high owned if we do get like worse weather in Cincinnati than we're expecting.
Yeah, I mean, look, for the most part, pitchers against the White Sox has been a winning strategy here over the course of the last month. I get the point about Marsh being a little bit popular here, but I guess if you were making an argument fully for White Sox, they do get the Kansas City Royals bullpen, which has not yet been solidified. So perhaps there's an opportunity there, but we will move on. We've got 2 games left here for this slate. And moving into Milwaukee, just right next door to Chicago, Atlanta Braves came alive over the weekend, finally heading into Milwaukee. For Milwaukee, Colin Ray is the starting pitcher for the Brew Crew. The Braves going with a bullpen game here. Grant Holmes, he is 4K, the minimum. He's been a pretty good pitcher in relief. Last couple of times out, he's gone 3 innings. People speculating that you may be able to get 4 innings out of him. He's certainly not a priority for me, Bryce. I'm much more interested in bats on both sides of this game. What are your thoughts here on the Braves in Milwaukee?
Yeah, I pretty much have the same thoughts here. I think Ray's going to be like pretty chalky. I see him coming in at about 20%. I definitely want to be selling there, and it's kind of the Marsh theory. I don't think he should be garnering the ownership that he is here at 6.9K. So yeah, I'm going to be buying on the Braves here. It's you're a Braves guy, but they're just not as expensive as they were. It's not that hard of a stack to fit. It's not like the Brewers are like a good bat or bad park. It's pretty neutral, but yeah, I just think they're really solid leverage today, and I'm likely going to be over on the Braves, under on Rhea. In terms of Holmes, have you seen any props for him? Like, I don't.
He does not have. Let me take a quick look here. He had a prop. He had a K prop up. He did not have an outs prop. The K prop was somewhat low.
Yeah, I don't really see myself using him today. I don't think he's going to come in as like 4K chalk just because, he's going to pitch probably 3 innings. I had to guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think the absolute ceiling is 4. And that's assuming everything goes absolutely perfectly. I don't.
That's just the type of guy I X out.
Yeah.
And then so you're basically getting him in a Braves bullpen game for the Milwaukee offense, which I don't mind. I buy on Milwaukee almost every slate. I just think they love to steal. I think they have a lot of upside, and it's kind of a long-term stance I have with them. So if you give me Grant Holmes in a relief pitcher game against them, sign me up for that. And bonus, they're not that expensive. Like, you can get Turang 4.5. Willie Adames is only 4.3. Jacob Bowers is 3.9K. Chiriot is 3.5K. Like, they're just cheap bats all throughout this lineup that really like let you fit like a Skeens and Pavetta or Evaldi with like a good 5-man stack and good like secondary stack.
I'll just stick on this point here because people are talking about Grant Holmes. Jake Swale says 52 pitches for Holmes last time out. That's not a normal arbiter for this type of situation. It's not like they're stretching him out to be well, maybe they could be after Ronaldo Lopez left yesterday's game, but they're also rumored to be in talks to be trying to bring in a starting pitcher or two. I think this is clearly a situation where they just don't have an arm to start the game. And they're going to throw him out there. They have a pitch limit in mind. We're not going to get it because the Braves generally don't do that. And then, like in 888 asks, how many points do you really need out of Holmes at 4K? Well, if you get 30 plus out of three out of 4 of Skeens, Pavetta, Eovaldi, and Gilbert, his 12 doesn't look so good, especially on a slate that I think most people are considering is going to be a little bit on the lower scoring side. It'd be different if you had some high-powered offenses in really great spots.
If you had like a Coors game with like a 12 total or some shit like that, like, or like a Wrigley Wind game, I just don't think he has the upside to get there whatsoever. He's a flat fade for me, and his raw score is not going to be high enough. Yeah. Even if he pitches well.
Right. I mean, you would need the ultimate outlier game where he goes a perfect 4. I just don't think that's going to happen here. So, and that's not what we play for, right? Right, Bryce? All right. We got one game left, and so we'll get to that game now. It's the Nationals in Arizona. Mitchell Parker for the Nationals and Jordan Montgomery back in our lives here for the Arizona Diamondbacks. Been a struggle for Montgomery this year, just a 15% strikeout rate, and it's been ugly at times, Bryce, so much so that I really do think that they're regretting paying what they paid for him to come in after missing all of spring training the first month of the season. Totals here, 4-1 for the Nats, 5-1 for the Diamondbacks. Props are low. I don't see myself getting to either one of these pitchers. Neither one of them excite me here, but I do have interest in these offenses. You're talking about a Nationals bullpen that has already traded Hunter Harvey, that may be looking to trade others. Diamondbacks bullpen that we've been picking on for the last at least couple of months, if not since the beginning of the season. What are your thoughts here for the last game of the slate? I think this is a potential late night hammer to bring your lineups home. What do you think?
100% agree. I kind of have taken a long-term stance on buying on the Nationals. Their upside is just really high. I mean, they run on everyone. It doesn't matter if it's righty, lefty, so I think they make for a really good 3 and 5-man stack. I'm not a Jordan Montgomery guy. I might end up I'm not Xing him out for my 150, but I'm going to be under whatever his projected ownership is here. Let me check that real quick. It looks like it's going to be 8%. I'm going to be under 8%. I'll tell you that now. The optimizer will probably give me a couple teams. So it's what it is. But I want to be over on both sides of the bats here. I think the Nats are a really good contrarian offense tonight. We've talked about their upside. And then, Mitchell Parker's a really good pitcher to attack with an absolutely trash bullpen behind him. So, and, I think Arizona comes in well below the Royals. And then, if there's good weather in Great American Ballpark, I think they come in below them. So, you're getting at least somewhat of an ownership discount playing Arizona over those teams. So I'll likely be over the field on them.
All right. So it's 5:26, and we are done with the 8 games. Going to go through a couple of our favorite plays here on the slate. Bryce, the pitcher that is going to be most critical to your success tonight.
Paul Skeens. I'm going to be well over him, just based on my runs here.
Talked about it earlier. Nathan Eovaldi is the guy for me. I'm going to be over him in a spot where it's a neutral matchup, maybe even a below average matchup in terms of the strikeouts that are available. But I think the leash is as long as exists on this slate, given what's gone on with the Rangers pitching staff. So Nathan Eovaldi is a guy that I'm going to be more exposed to than a lot of the field. What are your 3 top stacks? Only one can be popular.
3 top stacks. I like the Royals as my popular one. I don't think the Brewers come in popular whatsoever, and I don't think the Braves come in popular whatsoever. So I just like that Brewers game as a whole. I think Arizona comes in somewhat popular. If you said they wouldn't be, then I would put them ahead of the Braves.
Right. I'm with you on the Royals. Can't stop attacking this Chicago White Sox pitching staff. It just makes too much sense. But to your point, we want to get different. And the places I'm going to get different are power bats from the Twins, power bats from the Braves. And I really like a lot of these players for the Washington Nationals tonight in this matchup against Montgomery and the Diamondback bullpen. Who is your favorite offensive player on the slate?
Favorite offensive player on the slate, Bobby Witt.
Bobby Witt. I'm going to go with Matt Olson. Home runs on Saturday, home run on Sunday. When this guy heats up and gets in a groove, they disappear in bunches. 5,100. Braves are not going to be very popular. Bryce, final thoughts on this 8-game slate.
I want to get over Skeens over Eovaldi, and I'm likely going to be under on pretty much every other pitcher. Good contrarian offenses. I think I agree with your Braves. I like Milwaukee. I like the Rangers, and definitely keep an eye out on this Reds weather, because if the industry is kind of talking like it's dangerous and whatnot, but if it starts on time, you could get these guys at way lower ownership. And, if you're trying to beat 50,000 people, and you get like one of the better games at, sub 5%, that's kind of how you win some of this stuff. So, it all depends on your risk tolerance, and, we'll be in Discord helping you guys out with what we are all personally doing with that game.
Yeah, especially if this game starts, right? And then you get a delay, then you get, all right, maybe you're going to get a long man in who's not used to throwing as many innings as they're going to be required to do. Again, my one concern remains that Cub bullpen has been better than advertised. But good luck tonight. Get on over to the Run Pure Sports Discord. We'll have core plays. My core play will be up probably about 20 minutes before lock when I settle in on my main lineup. For Bryce,